Hello there, I am Yumemme Monty, and welcome to a new series I am starting. It's episode 1 of Yumemme Talks. I've been felt a little constrained by what I've been currently making and just decided to make something new. Today, for our first episode, I'll be talking about something I don't really see people talk about much, and that's the Danganronpa survivors. Now, in the Danganronpa series, with the nature of it, every single game has a certain number of characters survive. A small section of the cast makes it out at the end of the game. I generally like a lot of the characters that make it out. I think a lot of them get a good amount of development, and are generally in the higher levels of written characters. There are exceptions, but I generally enjoy most of the survivors, and could honestly do a ranking of how much I enjoy each one of them. That's not what this is. Today, I'll be ranking the Danganronpa survivors on how well they played the killing game. Now, let me explain. What I'll be looking for is a Danganronpa survivor who plays the game in an intelligent way. This is someone who manages how well people see them, how they are perceived, how much they contribute to the trials, how well they contribute to the trials, how well they contribute to investigations, and also just how they interact, how they carry themselves. That's the ultimate most important thing. Who they choose to associate with. All of these will be considered. And just a quick couple of disclaimers. This will not be based on my personal opinions of the characters at all. So if your favorite character is in the bottom position, sorry man. That's not my fault that they played the game like an idiot. And another thing, spoilers, of course. We are talking about the characters that make it to the very end, and from now on I will be listing them. So if you haven't played the games, or if you don't know how they end, go do literally anything else. So that said, and anyone who should be out of here gone, we have 14 survivors to rank. So, let's begin. At number 14, we have a character that's probably going to shock a lot of you at its inclusion so low. But we have Shuichi Saihara, the ultimate detective. Now, Saihara is kind of ruined by his talent. That being the ultimate detective puts a gigantic target on his back, and the fact that he wasn't murdered is just a gigantic mistake by every single killer in V3. And Saihara doesn't try and hide his intelligence at all. He is the major contributor in pretty much every single investigation and trial. This, on its own, is a very, very, very poor gameplay decision that outweighs his good decision of pairing with Maki and Kaito, physically stronger players of V3. Shuichi is ultimately weakened by his weak physique and his weak demeanor, which puts him down in number 14. And at number 13, for a lot of the similar reasons, we have the ultimate detective, Kyoko Kirigiri. Now, I'm not going to go too far into Kyoko because almost everything I just said also applies to Kyoko. So, the one big difference that puts Kyoko above Shuichi is, one, she doesn't remember her talent at the beginning, so the ultimate unknown gives a lot of uncertainty that causes killers to not exclusively target her, even if she is extremely obvious about her intelligence. That one factor, that elusiveness, puts her at number 13. Now, yet another character who takes the spotlight in trials, Hajime Hinata, the Reserve Corps student, is certainly an interesting case, though definitely not a smarter player. He doesn't pair himself well with anyone strong, and his ultimate unknown talent and the majority of the game does keep him safe, similar to Kyoko. He generally stays on good terms with everyone and doesn't start any major problems. So, ultimately, with staying on everyone's good side, he does play decently well, even though he's very obvious about his intelligence, which puts him on an easy number 12 for me. Now, number 11 is an interesting one. We have the ultimate lucky student, Makoto Nagai. Now, of the last protagonists to be on this list, Makoto does play things the best. He is mostly a loner. Makoto doesn't have any close relationships at all, aside from Kyoko in the late game, and that's mostly secretive. So, he doesn't really portray himself as anyone with any allies or enemies, and generally keeps his cards close to his chest. Though, despite that, he is still someone who is incredibly obvious about his contributions in trials, and this makes him a extremely obvious target, especially due to his weak physique. Though Makoto's good luck is possibly a deterrence from killers, though I wouldn't count on it. Makoto, though, often stays in groups, which is a really smart move on his part, sliding him in number 11. Now, moving into the top 10, number 10 is the ultimate affluent progeny, Byakuya Togami. Byakuya makes interesting decisions, to say the least, where in Trial 2 he makes himself known to be dangerous and a scumbag, which definitely isn't a very good move to make, but is not the worst possible move. Byakuya contributes a lot in Trials, however, which is his major downfall, though the fact that he's dangerous in that way of being able to tamper and just be willing to throw his life away pretty much is definitely not something that would be underestimated by a potential killer, and it's certainly why one of the two reasons he's lasted to the end, along with Toko being there almost 24/7. That is a very, very good reason why Byakuya is number 10. Moving on to number 9, we have Kazuichi Soda, the ultimate mechanic. Now, Byakuya was the last of the people who I'd say are playing, the survivors who are playing the game poorly. Kazuichi, I wouldn't say is playing the game poorly. I wouldn't say he's playing the game greatly. Kazuichi is simply just there. He's along for the ride. I have nothing to say about Kazuichi. He played a decent game, played decently under the radar, though not great under the radar game. So, with that said, is 9. Number 8 is the ultimate magician, Himiko Yumeno. You could basically just copy-paste Kazuichi's section here, seeing as they played very, very similar games of staying under the radar, but Himiko did have one advantage in the early game, in that she made some really good decisions pairing with Tenko and then the student council with Gonta, and especially Gonta in Chapter 4, who she stuck with for a large portion of that chapter. She made some good decisions of who to stick with, which nudges her above Kazuichi, even though she probably played a worse under the radar game than Kazuichi. Halfway through, we are at number 7 with Maki Harukawa, the ultimate assassin. Now, you may think Maki should be higher on the list, closer to number 1, because she's extremely dangerous and she shows that very well, which would deter any forms of killer, and I agree with that. The thing is, her being known as the ultimate assassin wasn't her decision. It was actively someone else's choice. Maki was outed by Kokichi, so she showed herself as someone who wasn't intimidating, who wasn't dangerous, and for that reason, I don't think Maki deserves higher than 7. Once she was revealed, she played a great game, staying with Kaito and Shuichi, 2 strong players, but she just didn't make the decision herself to out herself, which is why she's number 7 and not any higher. At number 6, we have my least favorite Danganronpa survivor, Sonia Nevermind, the ultimate princess. Sonia, I don't like her as a character, but she did play a pretty good game, pairing with Kazuichi and, more importantly, Gundam as a dangerous threat. She generally kept herself safe a large portion of the time, and she kept on good terms with almost the entire cast. Even Kyoko, she was able to get on to good terms with in Chapter 3. With that said, she doesn't really do much. She doesn't make many decisions. She doesn't contribute much to push her ahead past number 6. At number 5, we have Elise Saihina, the ultimate swimmer. And she pretty much just did what Himiko does, but vastly superior, with sticking with Sakura at the very beginning of the game, and also with a talent, and showing that talent very well, of physical exceptionalism that makes her a threat to anyone trying to kill her. She also generally keeps on good terms with everyone, so she's generally a very good survivor who made very good decisions. But unfortunately, Chapter 4 of her kind of intentionally suicide pacting everyone to death, that one's kind of pushing her down. 5 is the most I can give her. At number 4, we have the ultimate writing prodigy, Toko Fukawa. Now, Toko essentially plays a game like a bodyguard game like Himiko or AoE, where they have someone following them all the time, but instead, that person is Genocide Jack, or Sho, their alternate personality, which, that unpredictableness is just insane. You cannot predict when they're going to switch. They could probably switch on a dime if they wanted to, shown by in Chapter 5 when Byakuya makes them switch. Also, with the fact that Byakuya was near someone who's also perceived to be decently dangerous by the cast, Toko is in an excellent position, and number 4 is possibly an understatement, but I think the top 3 nudge her out a slight bit. Now, at number 3, we have Akane Awari, the Ultimate Gymnast, where Toko was held back by her lack of strong game decisions. Akane is held back in a similar way. She mostly stands by Nekomaru throughout the early game, which definitely supports her, and without Nekomaru, she's still a dangerous threat, being able to keep up with him. Everyone knows this right away through their fights, and people fear Akane for her physical strength. She stands up to Nagito multiple times, which gains the respect of the group. Every decision she makes raises her respect for the group, the group's respect for her. So, the group's respect for her being extremely high, her decisions all lining up perfectly. The lovable idiots makes it all the way to number 3. Now, we only have 2 left, and what is probably going to make a lot of you angry, Fuyuhiko Kuzuru is number 2, the ultimate Yakuza. Now, Fuyuhiko makes a lot of amazing game decisions. He is probably the godfather of the second game, which is a little ironic, knowing his talent. At the early game, he definitely went for a loner approach but he did have the bodyguard, Peko. That wasn't the best move, going loner when you have a bodyguard who would do anything for you, but it was definitely the right move to show the separation between the bodyguard, which was probably the smartest bodyguard play in the series. Second, after Peko's death, Fuyuhiko was extremely dominant in the group, showing when he split his stomach in Chapter 3, he was extremely dominant, showed his danger, his willing to sacrifice for something so minor. Fuyuhiko easily slides into number 2, but it's just not enough to gain another 1 slot. Okay, I can explain. Number 1 being Yasuhiro Hagakure, the ultimate fortune teller. A lot of you, I mean pretty much all of you, are probably shaking your heads why I'm implying that Yasuhiro Hagakure is the mastermind strategist, the true mastermind strategist of the Danganronpa series. But hear me out. Yasuhiro makes every good decision for a perfect under-the-radar game. Yasuhiro intentionally proves himself to be unreliable. I wouldn't say intentionally. Yasuhiro shows himself to be unreliable in every situation he's in. He shows himself to be an idiot. He makes him the perfect candidate to be framed, which is genius for the fact that people will catch on that he's very likely been framed, and further, from the fact that people won't kill him. This is an incredible safety net, along with the fact that since he doesn't really do any major fights, he doesn't generally cause any major commotions, he's generally in the center, near the center of the group at all times, doing good things for the group, but never really doing anything himself, creates a perfect sense of just being there in the background, without being forgotten and ignored. And thus, Yazhirugakuri takes first position. This was a little weird. This wasn't fully scripted or anything. I took a lot of my inspiration on how to rank these people from watching multiple seasons of shows like Survivor, and I think the list I came up with was surprising, to say the least, but I think it's very accurate. If you want to say I'm wrong, good for you, man. There's the comments down there. I'd feel free to have a discussion. I'm probably respond back if you have something interesting to say. That said, this was episode 1 of Yumme Talks. Later.